Hello and welcome. This is Bree Stedman, host of Own Your BS, the podcast, where your negative head talk and the bullshit stories you tell yourself become irrelevant, and solution focus creates a path of emotional confidence, clarity, and control. Hello and welcome to episode number 23 of Own Your BS, the podcast. I cannot believe we're only one episode away from the end of season 1 and that this series has been going for 6 months. It's crazy, isn't it? Now, today I wanted to do a podcast on judgment. And in preparation for this particular podcast, I started to put down some of my thoughts and tried to create some clarity because judgment is something that I work with a lot of women in regards to, and it comes generally in 3 variations. We have the fear of being judged, what other people think, what other people might say, the opinion of someone else. We also feel judged in the present moment. We can have an interaction with someone, and whether it be a look that they give us or a particular thing that they say or even the tone of the voice that they use, we can feel judged in the moment. And then, of course, we've also got the judgment that we have on other people. So there are 3 main streams of judgment that I kind of wanted to explore today. And as I started to think about these 3 streams of judgment, something that connected all 3 of them kind of surprised me a little bit, because it was probably one of the first times that I've been able to really see it from this perspective and yet have it make so much sense simultaneously. So I want to start by talking about fear of being judged, worrying what other people think. This is limiting to us as individuals because it often results in us holding our tongue, biting our tongue, holding back, not doing the things that we want to do it for ourselves, just in case someone else has an opinion about it, just in case someone else has a negative thought about it, or worse yet, they might say something. They might say something to ourselves, or they might say something to someone else. And so this fear of being judged, which is a very future-based scenario in that it hasn't actually happened yet. It's this, what if I say or do something that results in so-and-so saying or doing something? So it really holds us back in a way where we are allowing possible future scenarios to dictate current life situations. This is the fear of being judged, otherwise known as worrying what other people think. And like I said, when I work with my clients in the one-on-one breakthrough program Creatrix, the fear of what other people think, or the concern about what other people think, is one of the most commonly addressed concerns that I help women to release. It is rampant. And it also comes down to this lack of belief in ourselves, this lack of confidence that we may not be as good as somebody else. And that is based on the judgment that someone could have on us. So that's the first area of judgment that I wanted to talk about. The second area is feeling judged. Now, I know in the line of work that I am in, and because of the nature of the work that I'm in that I get online on social media and I open myself up for vulnerability. I share a lot of information about my own journey. I share a lot of information about the challenges that I have with my kids. From time to time, I talk about our whole family unit as a challenge and what that means in my everyday life. And I know through this experience of me sharing my own life that I am frequently judged on a very regular basis. I think I did a podcast episode on this a little while ago when I actually shared the most common thing that I hear from people when I start to talk about a challenge that I might be experiencing. The most common judgment that I have is when someone who knows what I do in terms of female head talk, they then turn and use my words against me. Well, Bree, are you owning your BS? You know, Bree, you're the one who's meant to have had all of this emotional resiliency stuff done. You should be holding yourself, better in this situation. You should be dealing with this situation better than you are. Maybe you need to go and own your shit, Bree, because you're losing it emotionally. These are things that people have said to me, either face-to-face or via messenger, a number of times in the past. And this feeling of being judged when you do something, when you are living your truth, when you are saying your truth, it can knock you off kilter. And it can certainly put you into a position where you start to question whether or not what you are doing is right. And in the moment when you speak or you do something that you feel is right for you, regardless of whether it makes sense to anybody else or not, and you get judged, it absolutely opens up the gateway for vulnerability. So I understand how challenging it is when you are doing something and you are feeling judged for what it is that you are doing. However, what I want to share with you in this instance is something that has helped me to separate from the judgment that these people might have on you and the decision that I made in regards to how I was presenting myself at that given time. And that is based on an amazing book. It's an amazing methodology, basically, which is known as spiral dynamics. Now, this is quite an in-depth philosophy, but it basically, and I'm just going to give you a very simple breakdown at the moment. I cover spiral dynamics in a lot more detail in my program, Own Your BS, because when you have a deeper understanding of the fact that everybody on the planet sees the world differently, everybody on the planet has a different level of awareness. And as someone who is going through an emotional development phase, and let's be real, if you're listening to Own Your BS, the podcast, and if you're wanting to get a better grip on your head talk, then you are on a personal development journey. So when we go through a personal development journey, we are essentially raising our consciousness. We are raising our awareness of self and also awareness of others. And quite often when we are during this personal development phase, that is when we are most prone to judgment from other people, because we are trying to break our own glass ceilings, and the people who know us for where we used to be, it takes them a bit of an adjustment period to better understand what's going on. And unfortunately, for the majority of the population, rather than trying to really understand what is driving you to change and to grow and to transition from, one version of yourself to another, the fallback is, rather than understanding, is judgment. So in spiral dynamics, they talk about the level of evolution, the level of conscious evolution that a person, a community, or an organization can go through. And there's a number of different levels that reflect various different levels of awareness. I want to bring your awareness into 3 of these levels right now, because these 3 levels are most often where a lot of judgment comes from. So the first level is what spiral dynamics refers to as the red level. Now, the red level are very ego-driven people. It's generally all about them. And I like to think of red level people, it's almost like they live in a world where there's a mirror consistently reflecting back to them. So everything that happens to them, they can't see how someone else might be impacted. They can't see how their actions could affect someone else, because they are only ever aware of what the situation does for them and how they feel as a result of the situation. Now, in terms of emotional support or emotional challenges, the people that live in the red zone, they're generally quick to anger, they're defensive by nature, they're very much driven by praise and recognition and needing validation from someone else that they are doing an okay job. That's the sort of challenging aspect of their personalities. The positive attributes of their personalities is that they are loyal. Just like they're quick to be defensive, they're also quick to defend. And I speak from personal experience because I came from a red zone. So I know when I feel attacked or when I feel threatened, it's natural for me to go back into this defensive state. And quite often that looks like I shut down, and that is often what then gets judged on from other people. So that's the red zone. And in terms of, modern day society, about 30% of today's modern population live within the red zone. So chances are you know someone who lives within the red zone. It is very, very common in lower socioeconomic environments. It's very common in domestic violence situations where there is a dominator. Yes, so that's the red zone. Now, as people grow through personal development, through awareness, through ownership, they move out of the red and they can either move into blue or they move into orange. And this was the journey that I have taken. So the blue zone is the most common level of awareness on the planet, and it is very organized based. So there's a set of rules, there's a set of standards. This is seen in our society. There is a certain way to do things. When we look at growing up as an adult, in order for you to grow up and lead a successful life, you go to school. You graduate from primary school, you go to high school, you leave high school, you go to university, you get a degree, then you get a job, you work your ranks through the job, you get into management, you work in management until you die, and then you retire. That is sort of the standard expectation of society, blue-like thinking. If you do the right thing, you will be rewarded. If you follow the path, you will be rewarded. There are always procedures in place. Generally, there's a rule book of some sort. There are boundaries. There's a very clear line of right and wrong. And when you are living in the blue zone, or if you have people in your life that live within the blue zone, generally they're not overly open to out-of-the-box thinking. And so judgment from them come from a lack of understanding, because unless it's in the book, unless it's done a certain way, it's wrong. And so as we are growing through this level of awareness, if we are going through it ourselves, there's a transition of, stretching the comfort zone and being okay with this new learning. And if we've come from that space where the majority of the people that we know are in the blue zone, then they can be perceived as judging your actions because they don't understand it. It falls outside of the normal structure, the normal procedure. People who live within this blue zone are often very fearful of what other people think. They are fearful of getting into trouble. Anxiety levels are high, stress levels are high. It's literally do what is expected and then you won't get into trouble and everything will be a-okay. So as if you resonate with the blue zone, you're probably recognizing that you're moving out of the blue zone. So there's probably a lot of people in your world that you feel are judging you because for their level of awareness, they don't understand this new out-of-the-box thinking. They don't understand this need that you have to empower and change or maybe do things in slightly different ways. So that's the blue zone. And then the next level, which is also quite common nowadays, is the orange. And again, around about sort of 20-ish%, 20-25% of today's society live within the orange zone. Now, the thing about the orange zone is it capitalizes on blue. So you will find examples of orange awareness within the CEOs of organizations, within leadership, particularly in direct selling and multi-level marketing organizations, where the leaders develop, the leaders get recognition, the leaders build success based on the success of their teams, and their teams are quite often the rule followers. They almost say, this is what you need to do. And because the blue ones love the security of the system, love the security of the step-by-step, orange are able to achieve great success. Now, my personal journey had me go from red, where it was all about me. I then moved into this structure of blue where I followed the rules to do the right thing so that I wasn't upsetting anybody. And then I moved into orange, where all of a sudden it was like, well, hang on a minute. I still have my ego that needs to be met because I was, and sometimes can still be, quite an egotistical person. I craved validation. I craved recognition and praise and a pat on the back. And so as I moved into this orange zone, unconsciously I recognized that the more trust I built within the blue zone, the more successful I was going to be. Now, that's a key thing for you to recognize. This is an unconscious awareness. And unless you study this kind of stuff, and unless you study yourself and own your own challenges and your own hang-ups, then all of this awareness of conscious evolution, it's a very unconscious thing. So the judgment that you either put out to the world or that you perceive from others is generally not done with intent. So by understanding that as you grow and as people around you grow, they're going to create new filters of conscious awareness. You're able to see people and people's situations from a slightly different perspective. Now, it doesn't mean that when you're feeling judged, you're able to go in that moment, oh, well, she's just very much in the blue zone right now, and I know that I think things differently, therefore this is just a lack of miscommunication. You don't always respond to it like that in the moment, because you're also human and you're also female. So depending on where your hormones are going to be and depending on the surrounding circumstances around that situation, you're still going to respond with an emotional reaction. However, the benefit of better understanding human awareness and consciousness is that after the event has been done and you calm the farm a little bit and you can come back into what I call emotional control, you can use things like spiral dynamics to better understand where those people are coming from. And ultimately, the better you understand those things, the less judgment you are going to feel and the less judgment you are going to give to others. And that judging others, is the third element of judgment that I wanted to touch base in. Again, when you are in the heat of a moment, when you are emotional, whether it's because of a situation or whether it's where your hormones are at, we judge others when our own opinions get in the way of seeing a different perspective. So what is the key learning from this particular episode? What I want to bring into your awareness is this. When you have a fear of being judged, or you yourself feel like you are being judged in that moment, you are being super critical of the way that you feel. When you're fearing judgment from others, you are concerned that you're not good enough, that you're insecure, that you're going to stuff up, that you're going to get into trouble. When you are feeling judged because of someone else, you are second guessing yourself. The insecurities that you're feeling are going to grow. You might feel doubtful. You might start to question whether or not what you did was the right thing. So you are hyper aware of critical feelings. When you are being judged and you are judging others, you become critical of actions. When you are being judged by someone else, you will likely buy into the head talk of, and when she said that to me, or when she did that to me, so you are criticizing her actions. Likewise, when you are judging someone else, you are criticizing the actions that you perceive someone else has done. And when you are judging others or you're fearing being judged, you are having critical thoughts. So when you are judging others, you are thinking critical judgment thoughts. I can't believe that she did that. She should have done that differently. Or, I can't, you get my gist. We've got critical judgment thoughts. When we fear that we're being judged by other people, again, we're stuck in this critical thinking place of, I wonder what she's saying about me. She's probably thinking that I did X, Y, Z wrong, etc., etc. So what does judgment ultimately result in? Whether it's fear of being judged in the moment, or you are judging others, you are experiencing either critical feelings, critical actions, or critical thoughts, which ultimately leads you to being hypercritical of yourself. So my advice for you this week is, when you recognize that there is some level of judgment going on in your life, and you'll notice it because you are ultimately criticizing yourself, you are judging yourself every time you feel judged or you are judging others, it's a reflection of the judgment you have of yourself. This is what I encourage you to do. Step 1, write down exactly what happened, as much detail as you can see. The action of writing it down in the moment means you will be less likely to over-dramatize it, particularly if you have reacted with an emotion. Because when we overthink and retell and replay a story, every single time we replay it, the story becomes worse and worse and worse. What she said becomes worse and worse and worse. The way she made you feel becomes worse and worse and worse. So writing it down as quickly as you can after it happened is going to help you to keep the facts real. When you have that, I then encourage you to take an overview. Take into consideration the 3 levels of spiral dynamics that I've introduced you to today. Are they a red person? Do they see everything as a reflection of themselves? Or are they able to see other people in their world? If they are coming at it from a red point of view, then the argument that you're having with these people that you're feeling judged with is going to be fruitless because they can't see an opinion outside of their own. This is just who they are. So rather than feeling judged by it, we can start to see their perspective differently and learn from it so that next time a situation like that comes up, we can do things slightly differently. If they're coming from the blue zone, again, is it this lack of understanding? Do you need to communicate things slightly differently so they can understand your out-of-the-box thinking? Or do you need to maybe come back into the box a little bit to better understand where they are coming from? If they are orange, if they are driven for success, if they are driven for praise and recognition and they're just wanting more and more and more, again, what can you learn from them so that you can communicate better with them? What can you take from their perspective and implement it into your world that will maybe help you to grow even more? So take an overview of what this situation looks like through different eyes. And then my favorite always is, what are you going to do about it now? What can you do about that particular situation? Is there something that needs to be done about it? Or can you just let it go? What could you do differently about that situation so the next time it arises, you can tackle it differently? What can you learn from it? That is the three main steps that I really want to share with you today. So what happened? Write it down. Take an overview. See the situation through different perspectives and then learn from it. What can you do? What can you change? What can you implement so that next time it becomes easier? And finally, before I finish this episode, I want to share with this. If you are one to consistently feel that you are not good enough, to feel that other people are judging you, and you're not quite ready to let that go, or you're still sort of growing into a space where you can see that judgment ultimately just comes from different perspectives, then the most healthiest thing that you can do is to set boundaries. If you know there are people in your life that leave you feeling judged, then create some time boundaries and space boundaries for those people. You're the only one who puts yourself into the position where you are consistently judged. And I know, again, this is quite a big concept to gather. But if you feel, or if someone makes you feel a certain way, then you have the choice, you have the power to change the way that you interact with those people. And again, this is the great and fun thing about personal development. It's not something that you're going to wake up from tomorrow, click your fingers and just understand. It's something that takes time. But the more you can own your own hang-ups, the more you can analyze what thoughts are going on in your head, the more you can take back your sense of emotional control, the less judgment you're going to feel from others. And when you do feel judged, if you can start to appreciate and understand where people are coming from, knowing that we're all doing the best that we can, we all have different levels of awareness, we have different levels of information available to us, we've all learned different things, and there's different methods for just about everything on the planet. Therefore, no one's opinion is right or wrong. The more you can find peace within that fact, then the less judgment there needs to be in your life. So that's my podcast for today, but I hope that it's given you some food for thought in regards to how you approach judgment. And remember, judgment always comes back to one of those three areas. You're either having critical feelings, critical actions, or critical thoughts, which is resulting in you being critical of yourself. So write down what happened, take an overview of how else this situation could appear from different perspectives, and then learn from it. What could you do differently within your control the next time that situation arises? What can you do to change that situation? What can you do to grow from it? And be sure to tune in to next week's episode, which will be the very last episode of season number 1. And thank you again for your time. Have a great day.